Hello, viewers and listeners. With us today is a special guest. I mentioned in the last episode that I'm going to have a few mystery guests on before the end of the year. So in this new episode of Unacknowledged and Unknown, I want to welcome Karrol Steeves to the show. Hi, Karrol.
Hi, Don. Nice to be here.
I'm glad our schedules matched up and I was able to get you on Zoom in this session. So what I want to mention to the people out there, the viewers and listeners, that Karrol has her own podcast on Anchor FM under the title Reality Ranch. It's on a platform, Anchor FM is a platform carried by Spotify and probably several other platforms. So really, it's going to be available to everybody, and I'm going to drop the link down below in the description below this video. So I welcome everybody to check her out and listen to what she has to say and the people that she interviews. So today, Karrol, we're going to be talking about something close to your heart, something that falls under the title of this podcast, Unacknowledged and Unknown. I'd say it's more unacknowledged in the West as opposed to being unknown, maybe suppressed. But there are people that know about this information, and more probably widely, people know about the information from, unfortunately, the negativity and the skepticism that has arisen from it. So we're going to get into that discussion. So, Karrol, give me a little sort of thumbnail about why or how you came across what we're going to introduce on this session, the Billy Meier contacts and the Billy Meier information, how you came to know or learn about it.
Well, first I'd like to say, before I found it, I want to acknowledge how hard I looked for it, how many years I searched for this information. And it's not like, it's kind of like when you go into, since I'm a woman, I'm going to say, you go into a store and you go, I need a new dress. I don't know exactly, exactly in my mind what I'm looking for, but I know when I'll know it when I see it. Do you know what I mean? So
yes,
I know what kind of occasion I want it for, but when I see it, I'll know it's the right thing. So over the years, from a very young age, I would say I really started, questioning. I read a lot of science fiction when I was young, and thought and watched things like Star Trek and shows like that. And I always thought it was absolutely viable that we could be visited by aliens or people from another planet, and that they might have already visited, and that if they were out there somewhere, we couldn't be the only ones. I just always took that as pretty much a given. And so when I became an adult, I really started looking in the New Age community, because of course I wasn't going to find it in the religious community. And in the New Age community, they had all kinds of UFO stuff, right? UFO, Zachariah Stitchin, they had all these abduction stories, and Whitley Strieber's books, Stryber, him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've read his books, and I was intrigued, and I thought, yeah, they're capturing us and experimenting on us. Well, maybe, I don't know, but I just thought that there was some, if we could meet them or know them, we would have some answers to who we are too. I just thought this might be the case. So when I finally started looking again. So I'd off and on, I would look, and then I'd give up for a while. You know how that is. You get distracted by other things, or life is, you know, life is distracting you, just the demands of life. And when I was about 46, I think 47, right in there, I started looking again in earnest. And the reason I started looking was because the world, things were happening in the world. I was observing things happening in the world, but it was being denied that it was happening. And I thought, that's very strange. Why do I get this impression something is being hidden from me, from us, not just me, but from us? And I would get this vision in my mind of a candy store, and I couldn't get in. I couldn't unlock the door, and I knew, and in the windows, all this beautiful, you know, enticing candy that's really actually pretty bad for you. And that there's something going on in the back room, and that's what I wanted to find out. What was going on in that back room? For some reason, that was always the vision that came into my mind. And so I was searching. I went to every new age bookstore I could find. I found the same books over and over again. None of Billy's books, not one. I even traveled all the way to Santa Fe to this famous bookstore there called the Ark, because it's really large. And I thought, surely I'll find something new there and I didn't. But of course, you know, the internet was really becoming a thing, and I was using it for work. And so I started looking on the internet, and finally I found, and I was looking at all these different, I was looking at Nikola Tesla stuff. You know, I went down all these rabbit holes, and searching, and I finally found this interview on Conscious Media Network with Michael Horn. And why it caught my attention was because, you know who George Green is?
Yes.
You know who George Green is? Yeah. Well, I'd already looked at George Green's stuff and was going, really? And David Icke going, yeah, we have reptilian aliens in the government. Man, that's terrifying, but I don't think so, you know. I entertained the idea for a little bit and went, no, I don't think so. George Green had mentioned Billy, but not by name. He just kept saying this man in Switzerland. And I thought, it for some reason struck it reverberated. I went, okay, who is this person? I have a feeling I need to know who this person is. And I Googled a man in Switzerland. I didn't know what to put in. And of course, you know, all kinds of stuff came up, but not Billy. And finally, I see this little clip for a trailer of an interview on Conscious Media Network with Michael. And he says, this guy, he's talking about this man in Switzerland. And I went, that's the man. So
yes.
And so I watched this interview. And of course, after that, like my husband says, I'm like a dog with a bone whenever I get interested in something. And I just dig up everything I can on it. And that's what I did. I looked into it, and I was amazed and relieved at the information, because a lot of the information, while some of it was stunning and it rocked my world, of course, most of it was a relief, because it validated what I'd been thinking all along, things I'd come to conclusions on my own. And that was a huge relief about, you know, concerning religion and concerning the way women are treated in the world and how we should be treated, and the things about war and the way our earth is being polluted, and overpopulation. Because as a young person, I remember, you know, worrying that, you know, we were going to run out of room.
Yeah.
You know, because that little, you know, I was logical. I was thinking that we can't just keep having babies forever.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, people would make jokes and say, don't worry, war will take care of it, Karrol.
Yeah, just like they say, war is the best economic boon to the United States, that the best thing for economy is war. I always questioned that too. I thought that's sort of backwards, that you have to have violence and war to create peace. Never made sense to me.
Exactly. And, you know, when 9/11 happened, I have to say that I kind of fell into, they sucked me in at first, you know, because I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. I had just was opening my business I was 40, and it was my opening day for my home care business. And I'm sitting in the bank opening my my bank account because I decided the day I opened my account was the day my business was going to open its doors. And I'm watching on the TV all this stuff about the towers, and I thought, this is horrible. And I was shocked, of course, but I thought, I'm not going to let this scare me. I'm not going to let it stop me from what I'm doing. But I also, when they started beating the war drums in the US, I got kind of patriotic that way, going, oh, we need to do something. And then I started going, wait a minute. As things started to unfold, I went, yeah, this sounds really like we're going way over the top here. What the hell,
Yeah.
We're going to go annihilate these people. That's not the way to do it. And so when I found Billy's stuff later, and then I got, of course, my business was very demanding, so I got distracted by that. But um, I really, I really felt a lot of my attitudes about war when I was very young came back to me, and I saw how much brainwashing had been done on me also, as far as I'm not a vengeful person. Luckily, I've never been naturally someone who sought revenge. In fact, people will tell these revenge stories. I'm like, how come I never think of doing things like that? Huh? I'm glad I don't. But, I'm not saying I've never had revenge fantasies, because I have. Everyone has, I think. But they're usually really mild things like, I wish I'd said this to them, and usually I'm just tongue-tied. So I really felt that it changed my life for the better. My life, I'm not the same person that I was since finding the Meier material, for the better. And even my youngest son, who kind of makes fun of it, he's intrigued by it, but he's like, either Billy's a con artist, or he's brilliant, or he's both, or it's true. I don't know. He said, but he sees the things unfolding, because it's been 15 years ago that I found it. And he's grown up with it. He's 20, he'll be 27 at the end of this month. And he's amazed, but he said, but I have to admit, Mom, that, since you and Dad started reading this and studying it, he said, it seems like it's helped you guys for the better. He says, I can't deny that.
That was my next question. Your family, your boys, your husband, they witnessed this change of not just attitude, but also behavior, or at least your viewpoint in the world. And I assume they probably noticed that over the 15-year period of time.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think probably if I were to ask them the biggest change, I don't know what they would say actually for sure, but probably that I'm a more peaceful person, that I'm more accepting of, and that's saying a lot for me, because I've always been a very open-minded person, but because of the way I was raised, there are things that happened in my past that would come out in my, my actions or my decisions that doesn't happen anymore. I've neutralized so many negative things in my personality, and also I've become, I would say, a more confident person. I still, because for years and years and years, I realized in the back of my mind, I actually accepted and thought women were second-class citizens. I didn't realize it wasn't even conscious. It wasn't something I thought consciously. I just, by my actions, what I accepted, some of the things I accepted in my life, the things I expected, treatment, pay, how you're treated in an office, all that. I had to, you go back over all that, and I looked at that and thought, wow, they really did have me brainwashed. And when I would stand up for myself, which I tend to be a person who does that, I always felt guilty.
Yeah, we are
myself.
The West, especially the United States, we are a very patriarchal society.
Yes.
And anybody who tries to deny that and says, well, those opportunities have always been there, have been there for women. And it's always been sort of like this progressive attitude that here in the West, that women have, I mean, I think in some ways, from what you just said just a minute ago, your confidence basically you have to have that confidence in order to know who you are.
Yes.
To then harmony flows from that. I guess harmony comes from that. So that from all that you can see, you can even learn to accept people that are different. And and in this walk of life, there's a lot of that going on. There's these differences everywhere, and trying not to be weaponized to go after people that are different than you was a hard thing, I think, for many of us, even people that know about the Meier material and have tried to apply it to their lives. It's sort of you have to know who you are first and understand like your beginnings, where you came from, as in your case, how you were raised. So yes. I wonder if you are ever determined that there's never going to be, if there ever is going to be a change in the near or distant future here in the United States for how not just minorities, but how women are treated. And even though that has changed a little since the Voting Rights Act for women to vote, and even to some lesser degree, the civil rights movement, I just wondered if you could sort of expound or reflect on that a little.
Sure. I think that's a great question, because I don't think that the change in a positive way is coming. I think it's going backwards. And it's very concerning to me that that's happening. And I see it happening in a multitude of ways, just small things that I think a lot of the population don't realize what it really means. They think it means, for example, for a woman to be, for them to say, well, a man can be a woman too, or, the things like that are happening, that negates gender, just like it does if they say a woman can be a man, or there's no gender.
The fluid genders, yeah,
that negates gender. And I know that's not going to be a popular position, but I don't care. I know it's not politically correct, but I don't care.
Yeah,
that it's not politically correct. And so I see just the shows, some of the things that have become famous, like The Handmaid's Tale. I read that book actually when I was in my 20s. And in fact, my husband, Bill, is the one that told me about this book. And I read it and I thought, that is chilling. That could happen. And because it has happened. The writer, she will tell you, I've read just about everything she's ever written. And she will tell you, I'm trying to think of her name, the author. It's slipping my mind right now, but she said, I don't ever write about anything that hasn't already happened, because I don't want anyone to accuse me of having a sick imagination.
Yes.
Which I thought was pretty humorous. And I thought, well, yeah, that not only has it happened, it happens over and over again. The enslavement, denigration of
a woman,
not women, or just segments of the population.
Yes.
And I see that just the things that are happening, I think we're going backwards.
And I noticed that too, that they like to use words that are buzzwords that really basically dumb down the real meaning of what's going on. For example, when they say certain segments of the population, minorities, women, are marginalized, they use the word marginalized. And a lot of people nowadays, when they hear that, they go, oh, that doesn't sound bad. Marginalization, it's instead of saying it's a form of enslavement, it's a deprivation of human rights, not constitutional rights or civil rights. I mean, the Constitution was there to ensure that some groups in society had that, were entitled to the human rights. And then later on, they changed some of that language in the Constitution. But
mainly it wasn't it for men?
It was more for men, yeah, because even with minorities, they excluded, even blacks were excluded in the original. You don't have to read the federal papers or anything like that. Definitely the Constitution, and even the Declaration of Independence, they excluded blacks. They were sort of classed with animals.
Yes,
They were sort
I
of
know.
included in that class. They were soulless. But I don't want to digress. There's a lot of information I want to ask you about.
Okay.
One of them is how has the Meier material, I guess you sort of covered part of that, has created change in your life, but how has it affected your life also, as far as, not just your trips overseas to Switzerland, but you trying to affect change on more than just yourself, but the people around you. As, for example, you created the Colorado Interest Group. How has that helped you as far as understanding the human element here in the United States and how people are?
Well, yeah, there's a lot in that
That's a
question.
loaded
So
question. Yeah, I know.
it's okay. I'd like to start with something I was going to say earlier, because you were asking me how it's affected my life. And one of the big things it's done for me, as we were talking about becoming more confident, is the writings that Billy has put out about women and just people in general, how we are to be accepted as we are, how we look, that we don't have to spend all this time, because one of the things that happened to me as a child is I was made fun of for my looks a lot, to the point where it scarred me. And so I had a very distorted view of the way I looked. And I was always trying to look perfect. That takes a lot of time to look perfect, and to always be wearing the most up-to-date clothing, hairstyle, makeup, so that no one will criticize you. But then they criticize you anyway, right? I found that out. It doesn't matter what you do. And I was coming out of that. I had already stopped reading women's magazines by the time I found Billy's stuff. And it really helped me let go the tail end. I stopped coloring my hair, thank goodness, because it causes cancer.
Yes.
10 years ago, I finally just stopped completely coloring my hair, maybe even a little longer than 10 years, and accepted myself for who I am. And that was huge, to be able to just go, I'm good enough the way I am, the way I look. Luckily, I've always been someone interested in also working on my interior. I wasn't just focused on how I looked, but I just had a striving to improve myself. That has always been there. And I'm so glad that I've always had that. And so when I found this material, it just fit right in, because I'm already someone who analyzes myself and what I do and what I say and how I act. And so this fit right in. I didn't have to go, oh, I have to start watching myself. I thought I already do that, but this I'm already doing it. But it also made it a little healthier, because I was a little kinder to myself, and also just more realistic about, I think, not being so afraid of my faults, not being so afraid of them, just being like, okay, I have this, okay. Which I was a handwriting analyst when I was younger. For 10 years, I analyzed people's handwriting, and I analyzed my own. So that was really very instrumental in helping me to see, because, you're learning all these traits in handwriting, because, it comes from the brain. And I would have to see those traits in my own handwriting. So of course you have to go, well, I have that. Well, okay, I have that. So how is it affecting my life? So
very revealing.
Yeah, it is. And so that's, that self-analyzation. Like I said, I'm not kidding when I say that I was already doing that, because, if you're looking at something like anything where you are analyzing human behavior, you're going to look at your own human behavior, I think, if you're a self-aware person at all. And so the way it changed my life is it really made me feel like, because when I was looking for it, I was like, what's my purpose? What am I here for? Just to make money and have a nice house and, go on trips and stuff. I mean, that's just, I wasn't enough. I thought there's gotta be, and, every time I'd look into some charity or some organization that I wanted to be a part of, it was usually corrupt.
And about 99%.
Yeah, and so when I found Billy's stuff and he showed me how corrupt it really is, I went, oh, so this isn't just me being so critical of,
Critical.
that it has to be a perfect organization. I wanted to be involved in something that I didn't have to go, I have to excuse this bad behavior over here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's, I think, part of seeing the world as it is, because you're also looking
Yeah.
at yourself as you are.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's very rare in our society to see that. People, they want to indulge themselves and they want to act a certain way on the weekends. And then during the work week, that behavior changes because then they feel it's excusable.
When I
know,
heard that people are different on the weekends than they are during the week, I went, I have to say, I've never been one of those people. So I was like, what?
Yeah.
I understand. But then I was engaged to a guy that was like that. And I went, oh, wow. Just like the alarm clock or lack of on Saturday morning goes off, and he was somebody different. He was an executive during the week, and on the weekend, he was this other person. And I was just like, what?
Yeah, it's hard to sort of understand that. You see that in all walks of life, and I see it. I see it
Right.
in my own immediate family that you run into a person in the store who will talk your ear off, but then if you work with that same person in that particular trade or profession, they don't even talk to you. It's like, I have to segment my life. And people
Oh,
haven't admitted that to me. They've come forward and says, nothing against you, but if you run into me outside of work and I'm with my family or whatever, I probably won't talk to you. But then in work, it's a different person. And I always sort of thought that was strange
it is
because
strange.
I grew up always thinking, hey, the guy you see now, that's who you're going to see when you're wherever I'm at in society. That'll be the same person. I wasn't always like that. I was conditioned to be like that as being brought up pretty religious, that you had to be a certain way when you were in church and then a certain way when you're outside of church. And I realized there's something wrong there. I recognize that as being, and that's another thing I noticed too is, and you sort of reflected on that. You mentioned that we're always taught to be perfect, as though mistakes are bad, and we have to be perfect at every second and minute. It's this competition thing in our society where we're competing with each other to see who's better at being perfect than the next person or your adversary. And to me, that's very unhealthy. I just felt it was just very misleading, and it led me to do digging as you did to find out, what am I missing here? This doesn't seem like it fits into. It's not normal. It's not common sense. But so I have another question for you. What was your? Yes.
I didn't finish answering your question. If you want me to finish, I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so you asked me then how it changed my life and what I was doing, and you mentioned going to Switzerland and things like that. And so yeah, once I realized what the Meier the mission, to better the planet, better ourselves, which will better the planet. Ultimately, we're bettering ourselves. And then I latched onto that because I said, this gives me such meaning for my life other than just being a consumer. And so, yes, I went to Switzerland just 3 times, but and I'd like to go one more time. I don't know if that's going to happen. And yes, we created a small study group. It's pretty relaxed. We just study a book, one of the books. Right now we're studying Arhat Adharsata. And before that, we did the whole book, The Way to Live. And we talk about life and how everything that's happening affects us. And I just try to every day line myself up with the laws and recommendations of creation. Am I perfect at that every day? No, but that's my goal.
Well, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. And I hope the people listening will comprehend and possibly replay this interview over at any point to sort of unpackage it.
Well, yeah, they can look into it for themselves and see what this material means to them. Because, really, you and I can talk about it and how it's changed our lives. but a lot of people, it's going to go right over their head. And some people think it's silly. And there might be some people though that go, huh, that's kind of intriguing. This sounds like something I might be interested in. So maybe they'll look into it. Who knows?
Yeah, I found that some of the people that are the most skeptical, or I should say, are more questioning
Mm-hmm.
of the conversation I may have with them, will actually look deeper into the information
Yeah.
and try to come up with explanations to
Right.
confirm why they doubt it and why it possibly may be a hoax. So I
Right.
guess
Well,
that would,
when I found it, I didn't just go, oh, I believe all this. Mine, it was more of, okay, I don't know about these contact notes. I don't know. I can't prove any of this stuff is true. But the spiritual teaching part of it, I absolutely was logical. There was no inconsistencies in it. I couldn't find any weaknesses in it. A lot of the prediction stuff, I went out and, well, I looked up all kinds of things. I mean, everything. I spent so many hours, vetting this,
yes.
looking at the health recommendations and the things that were going on in the government and all these different things that they were telling us about. And I was able to corroborate a lot of it. And the stuff that I wasn't able to corroborate, I figured, well, that's some of that stuff they don't want us to know. And yeah, so, but it's all coming out anyway, right?
Yes.
Those things that we couldn't find before are coming out.
Yes, and some of the stuff that hasn't been translated into English from German, that's still a whole immersive body of work that
Oh, yes.
I still don't know. When I do, just like you do, when I search certain things that I want to find out, whether it's health modalities, eating, just things that you would never even think to ask, you could find, at figo.org or Future of Mankind site, and it's in there. Surprisingly, a lot of this, but there's a lot of stuff that I've asked that I know hasn't, like you said, come out yet. It hasn't either been revealed, they don't feel we're ready for it, or in some cases it hasn't been translated from the German into the English. And what is really startling to me is when I would, just query simple things like regarding nature and what kind of plants are beneficial and what we should look for when we go out into the environment to better ourselves, what we should pay a particular attention to. You'd find that stuff, I always would say to myself, what isn't there in the, not just the contact notes, but the, I believe 60 books that Billy has published today. So that brings me to a sort of a more of a, I guess I'd say it's a lighter note, a question that's not maybe as serious, but maybe it is to you. What was your reaction when you visited the center and met Billy? What was your sort of initial reaction?
Well, the first, I'm getting this feedback. Do you hear this?
Yeah, you're delayed by a fraction of a second.
Oh, but my voice sounds normal.
Yes, yes.
Oh, because on my end, I sound like a sea monster. So
yeah, it was a little echoey there for a second.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. That's it is a lighter note, and it's interesting because when my husband and I decided to take a trip to Europe, we weren't going to go to Switzerland. Wasn't on our itinerary. We were going to Italy, and but I secretly wanted to go to the center so badly because it was right there, and Bill turned to me right after we got there, goes, do you want to go to Switzerland, to the center? I go, I do. And we knew they had the Sunday afternoons where you could go in the Sundays and visit and just, they have an open house kind of a thing where you can ask questions and look at the books and that kind of thing. So we took an overnight train, which was hilarious in and of itself, because we thought, oh, we'll get this good night's sleep and we'll be so refreshed. Nothing worked. Our air didn't work. They couldn't fix it. They kept saying it's a broke, and that's that was our saying all through Italy. It's a broke now,
It's a broken now.
because lots of things are a broke now in Italy, and you just have to kind of accept it and go with it, right? Because it's a beautiful country otherwise. And so we get there and we're both grainy and tired because we hadn't slept all night. And we rented a car and got lost in Zurich and ended up at the zoo twice. And we couldn't get out of the city
You
because we
just
were both so sleep
made a
deprived.
complete circle, kept coming back to
Oh,
it.
it was just hilarious. And the zoo's like this dead end. So you get there and you're up on a hill and it's like there's nowhere else to go. So we finally got out of the city and we made it to the center. And I was struck by first, I was struck just by how neat and orderly Switzerland is, just how buttoned up and pristine, and just everything so, especially after Italy, is such a contrast that these countries could be right next to each other. What struck us about Switzerland and me is just how orderly it was. It was beautiful, but I actually prefer the way Italy. I love Italy. If I could live anywhere, I think with no consequences, I would live in Italy. But the food, the culture, everything is I just love it. But I like Switzerland. But it's very orderly, extremely. I do like how on time everything is.
Yes.
Because I was raised, I'm of German descent, and my family was very much like that. So I feel more comfortable with, the schedule, everything being like, you say you're going to do something at this time, you're going to do it, right? Not, we'll just do it tomorrow, but you didn't tell you that you're going to do it tomorrow.
Yeah, they're sort of more organized in Switzerland.
They are very
I know
organized.
Italy is sort of like very relaxed.
Yes, Germany too is very organized, and they're more respectful of each other's time in a lot of ways because of that. That's what I like about it. Is you're being respectful of each other's time, and so we got to the center finally. We were struck by how beautiful and quaint the grounds were. The house was very, to me, utilitarian. Just functional. It was not. I wouldn't call it a beautiful home necessarily. It's not an ugly house either. It's not like an army barracks. It's kind of in between. It's just very practical.
Very practical.
Home. Everything's very practical there. There's no extravagance. But it isn't, we're suffering and living in poverty,
Yes. I also noticed too, when I was there, they're not given to excesses like we are in our culture. Where you have twos and threes of everything. You have stuff that you have for months and years, but you never use it, but yet you save it. Where they don't accumulate. They're not pack rats.
No, they aren't. I love that about, I love that more. I'm someone who clears my stuff out every once in a while. I moved around so much, that's probably why. So I don't like that either. If stuff accumulates around me too much, I get stressed. So that was very calming to me, that everything was so clean, and how clean. Yes. Big for me too, clean, very clean.
My wife, she noticed that about me too. I don't know if it's genetic because I'm part German, but I believe everything should be in its place, and everything there's a place for everything. At the same time, something, if it's not being used, I want to get rid of it. But that's a sharp contrast between me and my wife, because Becky is of the opinion that, and I think it's a result of her upbringing. Her upbringing, she was very poor, and there was a lot of poverty in her family. So those material possessions, she feels, I may not use it today, I may not use it for a year, but I may have a use for it down the road. So where I'm trying to clear it out, she's trying to hang on to it and say, well, yeah, but she'd rather give it to somebody and hang on to it. And it just, so we're always like, we recently cleaned her closet out, and I'm trying to say, we don't need this, we don't need this. And she's like, yeah, but wait a second, so.
I like to go by the 2-year rule. Have I used this in the last 2 years? Am I going to use it in the next 2 years? If I'm not, it goes. Yeah. So I get you there where that's concerned. So I liked that about that everything was so neat and tidy, and I grew up with the men in my family were like that, very neat. And so I didn't know men could be messy. That was kind of a shock for me later in life. But I would go to some guy's house and go, oh my, or anyone's house, where you've been to those homes where you wade through the clothes.
Yeah.
They're like, 2 feet, 3 feet thick on the floor everywhere. Those are rare, but, sorry about that. That was a kind of a shock for me, that how untidy and dirty some people are. That just
Yeah.
was shocking. And I would think, well, why are they? And I would want to analyze that and understand it, because it was just something so foreign to me. So that was very comforting to me, that it was so neat and clean. And yes, they are, no, they don't they aren't pack rats. And when they do
Yeah, they're not
something,
hoarders.
you know,
Even when I was in the tool shed there, putting away lawn rakes and shovels and stuff, I went in there and they had everything they needed and everything got used.
yes.
Whether it was a rake, a shovel, spade, or whatever they needed was there, and that got cleaned out quite frequently, because when I opened up the doors and I saw everything was organized and hung properly, and nothing was like rusty and was like collecting mothballs. It was everything. Yeah, it was very efficient.
Hmm. Yeah, they are. And so, I met Silvano, whom I just love. Silvano. I will miss, if I get to go back, him not being there.
Yeah.
He was such an ambassador. He was so warm and welcoming. And I talked to him first, and they thought we were just a couple of tourists that had heard about, this and showed up out of curiosity. And so he's getting out the picture books, and I'm telling him about everything that's in the books. And he's going, well, wait a minute. You know what this is? I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I'm here. And so he went and got Villia Stauber, because he said, my English isn't good enough. I said, you're doing just fine. He goes, no. Let me go get Philia. So he called Philia at home, and she came to talk to me, which I thought was really, yeah, it was really nice. And so we discussed the case and went through the books, and they said, how long have you known about this? I said, oh, about a year. I said, but I've been obsessed with it, and I want to become a passive member. They said, are you sure? I said, oh, yes, I want to support this cause. Absolutely. So I actually, Ava told me where to go and get my picture taken, because I needed, passport pictures for my card and all that. And so Bill and we helped out that day at the center too.
Mm-hmm.
We said we would the next day. I mean, we came back the next day. So that day we, just talked with Philly, and I said, can we come back and just help out? We just felt such, I'd read all the contact notes that I could find in English. So I read through everything that Billy went through and the group went through, trying to form this group, just the trials and tribulations. And I had such empathy for the cause. I had such a strong desire to show them how my support, I'm here to support you, because I really believe in what you're doing. There's that word belief, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes.
I know what you're doing is for the best of humanity, and I want to be a part of it. So they said, yeah, you can come back. And so the next day we came back and we met Cuneo. And so we get along famously with Cuneo. We really
I did too.
And he kept telling us, don't work so fast. Don't work so hard. You're going to wear yourselves out. And we're like, no, we're fine. And then it was time to take a break. And he said, oh, no, you need to take a break. We go, we're fine. We don't need a break. He said, no, you need to come in and take a break. And so Billy did introduce himself to us. He just came and shook our hands. And of course, I was sitting there eating sausage and cheese with my fingers, and he just grabbed my hand and shook it, and it was covered with sausage grease. I was mortified. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because, and sort of my experience was very similar. I had read a lot of information about it. By the time I got there, Silvano had passed away, but I got to see. I was able to see at Sitzburg his below the hill. There's a church, and I visited his gravestone where he was buried. And it was interesting, because a lot of people that just know very little about the Meier material, just Billy Meier and been meeting with these extraterrestrials and his fantastic UFO pictures, beamship pictures, wanted to say how everything was like it's cult related. This is a cult, and when I went there and I realized this is the farthest thing from a cult. There was no missionizing, no attempt to get me to become a passive member or a core member, or even nobody talked about. They talked about, oh, you're from Illinois. You're from where Chicago is, and they're like
Same
all
here.
the gangsters, and they know our society, our culture from the movies, and
Yeah.
some of the things they probably see in the press over there. And I said,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I says it's yeah, there's a lot of gang violence and still is. And I
Yes.
said, but I don't live there. So they were sort of in a way almost feeling sorry for me in the beginning, thinking I was from because I flew out of O'Hare, which is Chicago.
Right.
And I said, no, I don't. I did live in Chicago at one time. And I says, yeah. I says, I realized, like you, applying all that, what I learned later regarding the Meier information, that yes, the overpopulation was so stark raving mad living in that environment in the city that that you just could not. You had to have extreme patience, or it developed into rage or anger internally, but you couldn't release it. So you're walking around, as a lot of people do in large metropolitan areas, either pissed off with very biased attitudes and not even getting the chance to know who they are, because you never have a sense of self-realization because you're constantly distracted at every second, minute of the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So did you, what would you recommend if asked by anyone wanting to look into the Meier information? What would your primary recommendations be?
Well, I've had a few people who actually, not many, we've had spontaneously ask what I think about aliens or something, and I was like, oh, funny you should ask that question. I would just tell them to visit, if they speak German, of course, go to the FIGU site. But I usually just direct them to Future of Mankind. And I tell them just, look at the contact notes. There's stuff on the spiritual teaching up there. It'll give you a good idea of what this is all about. And I never hear back from them. No one ever comes to me. We've only had one exception, Bill and I, that I can think of in all the years that we have had the few people here and there. We used to have, back before COVID, we had information stands at the Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, Colorado. And then also we would do in kind of follow around the New Age fairs later, because it became more and more difficult to have the booths. They kept, it's like they didn't want us there, but they didn't want to tell us they didn't want us there. Or maybe just more regulations were coming. But, it got to where, no, you can't just put your stand here. No, you can't put it in the shade. No, you can't have an umbrella. No, it was just like, no, so what if you're out in the hot sun and you're at 6,000 feet elevation, and you're going to fry? Sorry. Yeah. So we finally just started, and that was free for us to do that. And the funny thing about that was the people, and Boulder's considered such a spiritual community, or it used to be.
Yes, yes.
And here's what my experience was. We'd have all of our brochures, all this amazing information. And we had our little skirt that said, what we were about on it, that so people could come up. Nobody would read any of that. Well, I shouldn't say no one. Many wouldn't read it. They would just look at our paperweights. I had these really cool paperweights. I don't even know where they're at now. I think they're in with our supplies that had been given to me as gifts over the years when I had my home care business. And one will look like a big pink diamond. And so we were using that to hold down the stuff. And we weren't even thinking it would draw people over. We were just using it so the wind wouldn't blow our materials away. They all wanted to come and look at the paperweights. Oh, we're just coming over to look at your paperweights. And I think that's very telling.
It is very telling.
Isn't it? And that was the majority of the people came over. And if they didn't come over to look at the paperweights, or their kids didn't want to look at the paperweights, the other reason they came over is, what's this all about? Because they saw overpopulation on the banner. And they would get in this defensive, what's this all about? And we're like, we just very matter-of-factly explained it to them. They'd go, oh. And then they'd say that we were not trying to convince them of anything or argue with them, or we just would give them information and say, here's some pamphlets if you're interested. But, if you have questions, just ask. And they would leave. All the air would go out of them. So we never had only one major confrontation. That was just over the spot we were in. We'd supposedly taken a guy's spot and he went ballistic on us. But and the other reason they came over was to tell us how things really are. How they think they think.
So there's no exchange of ideas. They're just like, we're going to foist on
very
you.
few.
what our
very few.
viewpoint is, but we're not going to be recessed. So, and I noticed that now more so than ever in 2022, and I think it's been getting worse in the last probably couple decades, is people don't want to have a back and forth. They
No.
want to, there is no exchange of ideas. There is my ideas preempt your anything you may say or respond to.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we have to be, you have to hear us out. And then anything you have to say, well, we're done now. And their eyes glaze over and we're out of here.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely.
find with even the mention of overpopulation, was, it wasn't even, it was a kid, a guy he was in his, I believe he's in his early 30s now, but
Mhm.
he was a friend of a member, one of my kids, and somehow we got onto the subject of all the ills of the world. And you know me, I don't hold back, and I just came on and said, well, I think the cause of all the issues of the world, all the problems, and uh, whether you talk about climate catastrophe or disease or epidemics or any of that political discourse, I says all the problems are caused by one thing and one thing only. And I say overpopulation, which he immediately follows up with, oh, you're talking about like eugenics. You're
I
talking
know.
about limiting the population through dastardly means. And I go, well, why can't we talk about like birth stop or even a birth limit? And that's nothing to do with eugenics. As
Mhm.
and he was sort of tied into some of the New Age community's beliefs, and they
Mhm.
immediately go to the minute you mention that, uh, they don't think, because they've been conditioned and indoctrinated to think that you can hold two opposing thoughts in your mind, and they don't know how to do that,
No, I know.
and not understand that you have to use reason, understanding, and logic to understand that you're trying to achieve some kind of parity in the world with maybe stopping the overpopulation, not by reducing it through chemical or weapons means. That seems to be the big thing in the New Age community. They sell the negativity, and then people
Yeah.
buy into that, and that's the only solution they know.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because, I'm getting the feeling now that when you bring up overpopulation, even more so than in the past, before it was more like people were like, huh? You know, now it's becoming dangerous to bring it up
Yeah.
because of what has been cloaked around it. Like you were saying, it's so negative. If you want to talk about controlling our population, as you're saying, it's violent, um, tyrannical, methods that are targeted towards specific population groups.
Yes.
And I when I see, unfortunately, this whole green movement that's happening with the neoliberals, they are doing the green movement a huge injustice. The real green movement, the real
Yes.
love of planet and humanity and preservation. They're doing them a huge disservice, and they're actually, um, where Figu tries to take or does take a more, neutral, positive, just let's present the facts, let's give the information and let people work through it on their own, present logical arguments. Um, and we know it's a slow, painful process to get people on board so that they understand, of their own volition, because as you said, they don't coerce or try to get you to do anything. That's like when I went to the center, I go, hey, I want to be a part of this. They didn't ask me to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
They kept feeding me too much is what they were doing. I was like, stop, I won't be able to work and eat after lunch. Like they kept giving me cookies and stuff. I'm like, no, I don't want any more. Thank you. They're being so nice. They were
That's
all
how
really,
Eva was when I was there. I
yeah.
was like, yeah, she created this great soup, and it was an Italian dish, and it had, and there was like, I finished it pretty quickly, and she came over and she started ladling in more like
Uh-huh.
porridge from the
Yeah.
big bowl. She had like a
Uh-huh.
Dutch oven, and she started
Uh-huh.
ladling it in, and I go, and she goes, no, because she could tell I liked it, And
Uh-huh.
and they always, you always make comments when you're leaving, like you say your goodbyes, and you're going, "This is." I made the comment, "This is like my second home," and they go, "Oh no, no." Daniela and Eva go, this is your home. This is your first home." They try to articulate that and say, "No, this is not a second home. This is your home." So that brought me back to the realization that there's a lot more going on than what you first see when you arrive there.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
I saw kindness, so much kindness, but I also saw this very, which I love, this for me was just how everyone just said how things were.
oh yeah,
This
they
is,
were very
yeah.
just
I love that. I
yeah, they
love that.
just tell you how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's,
Yeah.
I only went there once, but I just remember it like it was yesterday. Some
Hmm.
of the things that occurred uh, on uh, on Sundays when they open up the center and people can come through and visit.
Uh-huh.
This was before the pandemic,
Right.
and it was a Sunday afternoon, and they have that one road that goes through the center, and then they have that sort of road that's elevated that goes through the public land on the edge of
Yeah.
his of the center, and
Uh-huh.
people were walking through, and so they usually have one or two core members outside, one on like security watch, and
Hmm.
I believe his name was, I forget his last name, but his first name was Daniel, and there's a lot of Daniels,
Hmm.
and he came from he lived nearby. He was a core member, but he came in and did his security and his duties during the weekend also. So he's there on Sunday, and I saw him on the back, sort of like the veranda behind the center, overlooking the garden where all the birds are. And he was back there walking around, sort of doing his duty. And I started, me, I talk a lot, so I walked up to him and I started asking him questions. And he was
Hmm.
engaging at first. He was trying to, he was being honest and trying to be just kind, answering my
Hmm.
questions. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I wonder if I'm pulling him away from anything. And
Yeah.
before any even thought left my mind, he goes, I'm working. I really need to attend to my duties. I know, he says, I can't answer everybody's questions. He says, I really have to attend to this. And in a
Right.
nice way, he just said, I have to go do my
And that's
security
how it should
tasks.
be. Yeah, that's how it should
Yeah.
be.
And
So
it
I
was
thought,
like, I'm like, that's great that people, I think we should have more of that. And
oh, we should.
society would be so much better if people would say what they mean and mean what they say. And there's
Yeah.
no offense to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. When we, when we had our information stand and we moved it to the New Age fairs, that was actually more productive for us. It's expensive to be in them, but we were like, we don't care because that's where I was going. My argument, my when I presented this idea to our group, I said, here's why I think it would be a good idea for us to go to New Age fairs because when I was looking for the truth, I was going to the New Age fairs. And sure enough, we had more people stop and want to engage with us, but most of them still wanted to tell us how it was.
Yes.
But there were people who would stop and look at Billy's. I had Billy's picture through space and time sitting there, and they'd say, this book is these pictures are real." I'm like, yeah, I know, that's why they're here.
Yeah.
And so we had conversations with people about religion and things. More so, people were actually a lot of the people there. The impression I got though, Dawn, was they were there to. A lot of them were lost, and they were kind of broken inside. Many people from some kind of traumas, and they wanted someone to tell them they were special and that they were going to do great things because they would all go to these, but one of the big draws were the psychics that would line the edge of the
Yes.
room. And so they'd go and they would come and say, well, you know what the psychic just told me? And I'd say, yeah, I can almost guess what the psychic told you, that you're going to be a leader and you're going to do all this stuff. And because I know when I did my new age exploration, that's something I finally came to the conclusion that they were telling me what they thought I wanted to hear. And it was
Yeah.
just confusing me instead. I was like, really? Wait, and some of
Yeah.
it
They're
didn't make.
feeding you. They're
Yeah.
feeding your ego, and
Yeah,
people
exactly.
want to know, especially here in the United States. I've lost count of the people that told me the psychic or medium told me this, and
Uh-huh.
therefore I feel special, and I'm in a
Yes.
way more significant than anybody else. And because I carry this, it's like a treasure, but nobody else has access to it. Only I do.
Yeah,
Because I'm
exactly.
special. And it's unfortunate that
Yeah.
people have their egos padded that way
Yeah, it's a
and
con
massaged.
too. It's a con.
It's a con. And I
Yeah,
have
it is.
a member of my family going through that. And what do you say? There's nothing you can say. You have to help let them muddle through it, because
Oh yeah.
anything you say that may be common sense or logical to sort of question what they're going through, they take it as an attack, a
Oh,
personal
I know.
attack, and you can't. So you just sort of have to let them muddle through it until they get to ask that question. Hey, I want you to see my psychic, or I want you to see my medium, and then I gotta be
Right.
truthful,
Hmm.
and it doesn't bother me, because I'm sure I have my own biases too, but
You're working on them. You're working on them. You know what I mean? You're
yeah,
working not to have those biases. And that's the difference, I think. And you know what would happen once in a while was somebody, one of the psychics would come up because they would talk to someone that we had talked to, and they'd go say, "This is what they're saying at their booth." And they had this pamphlet about occult and channeling and stuff. And they'd come over and say, "So I hear you guys think this about blah blah." And we'd say, "Yes, very matter of factly." Well, here's a booklet if you want. Sometimes they would take it, sometimes they wouldn't, but they'd be, oh, but there was never any violence because of our attitudes. We weren't
yeah,
proselytizing. We weren't standing up and denouncing anyone. We were quietly sitting there with our truthful information,
yes, yes,
just being very low key, because really and no one ever kicked us out. But the first one I signed up for, she kicked us out before I even joined. We even showed up. And she said, "We've had some bad experiences in the past." I said, "Well, I don't know how you could hear. There's hardly anyone in the US that's even into this." But obviously there was through MUFON, I guess there was some altercation, and I said, "Why don't you just give us?" I sent her an email explaining who we were and why we wanted to do what we were going to do. And I told her, people deserve to hear this side of the story. If you guys are so open-minded, they deserve to hear this side.
yes.
And when I was searching, this is what I was looking for, and they let us in.
It's
And
so
we never
suppressed
had a
that
problem
it's a
after.
miracle that anybody in the last 15, 20 years that I've known about the information, I have never, even people I've said the name Billy Meier, and they're like, they don't know who
Oh,
I'm talking about. Or
I've come to a few people who do, but they never
yeah,
took it any.
the ones that have mentioned that they've heard of them, it's because of some photos that were in a search engine that they discovered, and that's all
Right.
they know is some guy that took photographs.
Yes.
They don't even know if it's Switzerland. I've been told he's from Germany, Luxembourg, Austria.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Never the correct country, and
Yep.
he's been, his name is never correct. It's always like Myers, or
Yeah.
it's never, or I even was told it was Billy Squires, which I found out later was a musician, I think a country western musician.
Well,
Uh,
and the one I think that does not just injustice kind of is when they go, "He's a poor farmer." I'm like, no, he isn't. That isn't what Billy is. He's not a farmer. It's like that's a whole different light. You know what I mean? Yes, they
that's a
have
whole different,
some
right.
animals. Yes, they have a garden, but is he a farmer? No.
Yeah, that was sort of like the thing that sort of was the buzzword, the poor one-armed Swiss farmer.
Yeah, I
He's a
know.
one-armed guy who, works at a center and telling me
Well, he
I'm
lives
running
there
out of
too.
time.
He lives
Yeah, he
there too.
works at a center, and he writes a lot of books, writes a lot of information, and
Well, that's
I
what it is. He's an author.
he's an author. Yeah,
Who lives on a farm.
he lives on
I
a
would.
farm. I don't even like to use the word he's a Renaissance man. I don't know if there is no category I can think of to put him in.
That's a good one though. He does
Yeah,
a little bit of everything and he does it well.
he does it well, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just
Yeah.
when I try to explain it to people, I'm like, well, I just can only point them in a direction and go read this, look at this,
That's all you
you
can
know,
do.
yeah, and then hopefully because we live in this, uh, we need it now society.
I
We need
know.
that, immediate satisfaction right now. Can't you put it in a 2-minute blurb? Can't you give it to me like tell me what's going on? And I'm like telling you, why should I dilute it for you? Why should I share something that I myself am still, comprehending a lot of that information to myself, and I don't want to get people to misunderstand me. I'll give them the blatant my viewpoint, but I don't. I always tell them that's my viewpoint. That's what I think, or have come to discover. You're on your own. You go find out for yourself.
That's actually really freeing too, because when I first found the information, of course, to me, it made so much sense and it was so amazing and so exciting because, after about a year, I thought this is the real deal. And I thought people would be much more open-minded than they are. And I'm over the years, the realization I've come to is that they are just intractable in their belief systems. And it's going to take so much time for people to wake up and see reality. And so I just kind of let all that go. I don't worry about it because I can't force it. None of us can. And that's something we're taught. Of course, Billy says that over and over again, pretty much.
Yeah.
That people have to figure this out on their own. But, what's really a shame is how they're always trying to squelch it down. Like my son, who studies it with us, says, it's so amazing. I watch all these UFO shows and Billy is never mentioned. None of his photos. It's the most convincing case out there. And even my younger son has taken note of that. He said, yeah, there must be a reason. I said, oh, there's a big reason.
There's a big reason.
He has the best pictures out there, the best photos out there, yet he's never in any programs.
Yeah, he has the best evidence, the metal samples, scientists that have examined the evidence in the metal samples, from the sound samples to the photos and to the old Super 8, film. There's nothing in comparison, but yet that's not, if you read the information, the books he has authored and the contact notes that he has written down, he doesn't really go into discussion about that information. It's in there and you can find it, but it's not like, and it's freely available, but it's just not, he just doesn't use that as like the flagship for all his information. And people don't seem to, that's what they want to look, is at the glamorous photos, the unbelievable evidence. And initially, that's probably what I thought. I questioned and brought me to it, just like it has a lot of people, but it ended up being so much more than that, that was beyond, to me, the photos don't mean much to me anymore. It's nice to look at, but
no, those were the attention getters. That was to draw people's attention to the case so that they would look at it. I totally get that. And it is interesting, but yeah, it's such a small part of and as as our technology becomes more and more advanced on our planet and the things we're able to do, those won't seem so fantastical to people. They already, I think, from the 15 years that I've been involved in this until now, people are more accepting that there can be life on other planets and, ships like this, because they're seeing our own technology grow.
Yes.
But as far as that, like you said, Don, they get all caught up in that and they don't go any further than the ships and everything. And, do you know who Seth MacFarlane is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Have you watched the series, The Orville?
Yeah, I did. I did watch some of that. I think it's on Paramount. It's on one of those. I have Roku.
Right. Well, it's interesting how he started out as a parody, of Star Trek, and it was funny and everything. But as his seasons went on, he became more and more serious, and it's addressing the same issues that the contact notes and the mission. He's bringing up the same. He's even showing how on one of the episodes that these aliens this crew flew to a planet and they're not supposed to interfere, right, with the culture, and they started worshiping one of the ship members because she healed a little boy with her little scanner.
Yeah,
or a little girl, I can't remember what, but now she's the goddess Kelly, and they created a whole religion around it and they were fighting over it, and I went, oh, this is priceless. This is great. This would be great for people to watch.
Makes you wonder about the influences Did
Oh,
Seth
yeah.
read some of the information?
I
Was
don't
he
know, but man,
impulsed with it? I even in Star Trek, the original series, with Leonard Nimoy, you know, I was
well,
a
I don't
Star
think
Trek
they're
fan since
impulsing.
I was, what's
I
that?
don't think they're impulsing anyone anymore. I don't think they're doing that now. I think that's over. But if it's impulses from a storage bank, so that's another story. He
That's
may be
another story.
doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know they were in some of the contact notes. They talked about impulsing scientists, engineers,
Yes. In the
doctors,
past.
people in the medical field. They were mostly people that were professionals, even science fiction writers. But
Yeah. In the past, but
in
I don't know
Star
that they're doing it now.
yeah, I
I don't
mean,
think
I think
so.
with the internet being so vast and widely available, you can access any of that.
Well, not only
So
that, but
I look at
this,
Alex Collier, what he definitely took information directly from the information from the Meier contacts and basically pretended to author this stuff. And he was, you know, that this was like his, you know, when you read Alex Collier's information, you realize he stole a lot of the information and pretended to show it as his own, uh,
yeah.
as though he was having contacts like Billy and doing all those things. But
How sad.
yeah, unfortunately, he plagiarized it. But there was, I mean, I remember in the original Star Trek series, and this is back in the '70s when I was right out of high school watching the Prime Directive not to
Mhm.
interfere in the evolution of certain
Mhm.
species on various worlds unless they were a certain they were a third or fourth what do they call in the Green Bank formula, they have certain levels of intelligence,
Right.
and if they were at a certain level of intelligence, then they would interact with them.
Mhm.
And then later on, I was like, wow, this actually there's this has sort of happened. If you read the Meyer information, it's based on reality, and
Right.
you're going to. So then that brings the case that, and so this was back in the '70s. So I always thought,
Mhm.
yeah, they must have known about or been aware of the information, even if he either read it or was in the storage banks or he read about it because
Said
it was
both.
available back then. Yeah.
Right. And so I see Seth taking it further. So he shows the scenario where they start worshiping and they have statues and it changes their culture. And really interesting, some really interesting shows. And he's, I guess Disney picked it up. It's good for him. He'll get more exposure because he's saying they're not going to do another season unless they get more traction. But it's really a series worth watching. It starts out just really funny and it still has its funny moments. But he got serious and he started really addressing the social ills of the world. And I was like, that's great. We need all that we can get
Yeah,
in
it's
a
great that.
logical way. In a
Yeah, did
logical
Seth MacFarlane, was he also did he do some other shows, some other TV
Family Guy.
animated sitcoms?
Family Guy.
Family Guy, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I was going
Mhm.
to say The Simpsons, but it's along that lines. Yeah,
No, that was Matt Groening,
that was Matt Groening.
but
Yeah,
it's interesting to see. I didn't really care much for Family Guy. It was kind of like watching a train wreck. But he was young, and you know how young people's humor is. They always want to
yeah,
shock everyone. Well, it's been interesting to watch him mature, and now he's addressing these instead of he was talking about. He's always talking about. It's always a social commentary with him, but it's just the way he goes about it. He's using less shock value now and more sensitivity and more maturity, and that just shows him growing as a person. That it showed his sensitivity and his maturity, and I appreciate that, and I think we need more shows like that.
yeah. I think there's a place for science fiction if it's based on science, believe it or not, and an
Right,
actual
exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
the laws of nature, in those people that are out there that have
Mhm.
done those science fiction series and episodes, even Star Wars. I think in some ways, if you look into it,
Oh,
it has
yes.
a connection. Battlestar Galactica is another one
Absolutely.
that
Yes.
were when I read Battlestar Galactica, I was like, wow, this is like an excerpt out of Contact 252, I believe. And I
251.
was, yeah, I was amazed by it. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is like, but yet the Billy information, and I told people that, I said, when you read it, I said, it reads so much better. Reality is so much better than science fiction. because it's
yes.
a historical narrative going back before humans developed primordial from this planet. There was occupation and visits to this planet in its early before the Jurassic and Triassic period they were visiting. So and that's what I never could accept about the UFO abduction books, about the thousands and tens of thousands of people that had tens of thousands that had been abducted. It would be like, if I go through my neighborhood, virtually every other person has been abducted. And I always felt that did not make sense. And I thought, if this is an advanced extraterrestrial race, would they not already know enough about us, not
Of course.
what I call medical examinations on us? And then
They
later on,
these are primitive methods of examining. They don't need to.
Yeah. I mean, remember the book Abductions by Bud Hopkins?
Yeah.
He wrote that book. I got that book years ago. Yeah, it was one case after another. Literally, the book is about hundreds of abduction cases. He was a psychologist or psychiatrist, and he was taking.
Maybe I did read that.
Yeah, it was called Abductions by Bud Hopkins. He was a psychologist or psychiatrist, but he basically recorded everybody's abduction scenario, and they're all pretty much clones of each other. They were pretty much almost identical. And I came to the conclusion, wow, extraterrestrials who supposedly have faster than light travel are visiting us and they know nothing about us. I thought that was a contradiction.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons why I kept searching like you did. I thought there's got to be some information out there about whether these abductions are really truly happening. And guess what? There was.
Yes.
In the Meier information.
Yes. And, Michael Horn made a really good point once when he said, why would they want to plant why would they want to, have babies with women on our planet? We're so inferior. And I'm like, exactly. You think about it, not only are we spiritually and, materially inferior than anyone that would be traveling to this planet, but we're also, because we've poisoned our planet so badly, we're also full of toxins and genetic damage and everything. Yeah. Why would they wouldn't, unless they were like, a sick group they were very ill physically and they were trying to save their species. They needed some
species. And that was what it's predicated on in the Bud Hopkins books and all these other abduction books. It's a race of, incredibly advanced technologically, 50,000, 100,000, a million years technologically more advanced than us. But strangely enough, they just don't have the technology to save their planet or their race. Yeah. So they're coming here to hybridize with us, genetically inferior in our toxic, our polluted atmosphere, and they're going to impregnate our women. I always thought that was a contradiction.
It is.
I got about halfway through the Bud Hopkins book because Becky knew that I was interested in science fiction, in science future, and she thought, well, might be science reality. So she bought me the book, and I got halfway through it, and I ended up throwing that book away. And I said, boy, this book is toxic. It's there's some really damaged people looking for significance in the New Age community.
Yes.
But what can you say about that?
And what's a shame too? A shame is that some of this rubs off on children, and they, like what my oldest son, he saw the book in the bookcase and was wanting to, Whitley Strieber's books. I was investigating all this. He was pretty young at the time. And he said, well, what is this? And I explained it. Well, then he was afraid. And I said, honey, I don't think this is true. I think this story's made up. He says it's true, but it's made up. But, this gets out into our, is what they're trying to do. It seems like that's what they're trying to do now, is make people very afraid of anyone from anywhere else coming onto our planet. That you see that hysteria. And now suddenly the government's saying, oh, we're going to let you see all of our information that there have been sightings. And why suddenly is it okay for us to know when it wasn't okay for us to know, like when Roswell happened? Interesting questions people should be asking themselves, and not just accepting what they're saying. Say, why is it okay now and it wasn't then?
Yeah, why is the government trying to unsuppress the Tic Tac video and all these other
That they work so hard to
videos?
cover up.
Yes, and
Yeah.
yeah, I got to look at the agenda behind it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're a nation of typically from even before the Bay of Tonkin and the false flag operations back then. You go back in our history, and we we have created so many false flags with the agenda to get the public behind it. And now they're trying to get the public behind, oh, these questionable UFOs that are a danger to our
You know,
society.
and
So
what this
that's why
really,
they're, I think to some degree, why they're unsuppressing it, because if enough people are afraid, you don't have to go back to War of the Worlds to understand why they would make it a, fear monger for the
yeah,
possibility that all aliens are are evil or not after our best interests. And I always thought, well, if they're advanced technologically, you would think that would have to go hand in hand with their spiritual development or creation energy development. So why would they be, you know, I think it's very sort of a contradiction to say they would be evil in trying to overthrow us. And they've been trying to overthrow us for literally thousands of years, since before the pyramids in Egypt were built. And they just can't get their act together to overthrow and get control of the planet Earth. I always thought that was, I said, that's crazy. That never made sense to me.
no. And I think I always thought it was such a shame when we were talking about shows and influencing, and that how Steven Spielberg started out with those great movies, that were more realistic. Like even E.T. wasn't so realistic, of course, that the little boys hit him and stuff, but that was funny. I don't think that was supposed to be taken too seriously, but that this was a benign being, and that our government came in and wanted to, like, destroy it or experiment on it or whatever. And they were able to get it out of there. And then when he did Close Encounters, I loved the direction he was going in. And instead of progressing and going to a point where he showed that there are, just like on our planet, there are good people and bad people and people in between, we're on a spectrum, that aliens are no different. Even if they're more advanced than we are, they're still on their own spectrum. And so some of them are going to be warlike and wanting to, take over your planet for whatever reason, for whatever reason they have. And then there are going to be the benign ones that just want to help you. Maybe they screwed up, like what the player and explained to us that, hey, we made some mistakes and we're trying to help you, and as much as we're able to correct these mistakes, but we can only give you so much, and then you have to run with it, which we're not. Right?
Yes.
And instead of showing something in the middle like that, he went from one extreme to the other. Now all the aliens are here to destroy us, take over. They're
Yes.
scary. And all the alien movies are like that now. You don't see anything where an alien is just alien just means that you're from somewhere else.
Yeah, but they don't even show there's a humanness or
That's what I
a
mean.
human quality about them. They're all very strange, just like they're using the inspiration of these weird looking sea creatures from like the Mariana Trench, and they're using that as a template to create these scary aliens that are going to visit us, and we can't understand them. We don't even recognize where they're from or we don't understand why they look like they do. And and I was like, why couldn't it be the opposite, that the most probably general form of extraterrestrials is based on the human form, which is to me the most accepted form. And I always wondered about that, and that was addressed directly by Billy Meier, and he talked and he says, "Oh yeah, there's literally thousands of different type of human-like people, and it's based on two arms, two legs, two ears. It's like it's a common thing. It's how creation works."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's logical. And to me, I find it's so hard to find even a good science fiction book or movie anymore. To me, most of I start reading them and I go, oh, forget it. Um, it would be nice if they're out there. There's just not as many, and it's the older ones are better. You know, like Heinlein and some of those are better to go back and just read the old stuff.
Or yeah,
But
Isaac Asimov had some good
yeah,
ones.
yeah, and oh, I'm trying to think of the guy who wrote "They Dream of Electric Sheep," Androids Who Dream of Electric Sheep, Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, yeah.
Yeah, that I can't think of his name. Anyway, those books are better, I think, but because he went into depth in the book on how the androids became. And so instead of just having an alien come and blow up your planet, how simplistic is that? That's like little kid. That's at the level of children. You
Yes.
know, how about if they come and you could hear their backstory, why they look the way they do, how their planet evolved, and based on cause and effect and what we could approximate intelligently. You know, we may not get it all right, of course, because it's coming from our imaginations, but it's also coming from science. So based on the principles we know about science, why can't they create shows like that or books like that? And I know there are writers that are like there's some what's her name, her last name is Cherry. She actually lives here in Colorado in Greeley. Her books are brilliant, and they're dark though, but they're
Yeah,
brilliant.
but they're
But
taking, I think those books and that type of artists that author those type of screen that do screenwriting or authoring books, they're taking science and they're looking into the future of what science will eventually develop, and that's what I thought was interesting about Battlestar Galactica. It was a race that had to leave their
yes.
dying star, their dying planets to find
Mhm.
new homes,
Oh, it
new
was great.
places. And what happened was is along the way, they had developed these Cylons, which were artificial intelligence, AI,
Mhm.
who had their prime directive changed. It was no longer to protect humanity. It was only, they developed their own consciousness and came to the determination that humans were an infestation to be controlled or eliminated. And I
Mhm.
thought, my mind went back to that when I read that in the information. I said, well, wait a second, where have I heard this before? Well, it was in a science fiction or science future series called Battlestar Galactica. And I thought, boy, the Cylons line up with what may be unfolding in our distant future.
Exactly.
And it is happening right now.
Mhm.
They're
And
finding
that's
out.
right. So that's a story based on cause and effect, based on science, where we could project science might go based on what we're doing now, right?
Yes.
And so what is so hard about that? That they, it's I instead they make these stupid, vapid, full of violence, one-dimensional characters. It's just very disappointing.
Yeah, it's all about it's killing uh just yeah, it's just violence for the sake of
Mhm.
violence, and
It
it's
is.
there
And
is
make
no moral to
everyone
the
afraid of
story.
aliens,
Yes, there is no moral to the story. There is no, you know what sort of interested me, and I saw this. I don't watch a lot of. I can't see anything from coming out of Hollywood anymore. That is like, I'm sure there's
Not
a
really.
few inspirational movies out there, but they're older now. And I always look for like inspirational movies. I'm so sick of the violence, the contrived storylines. They're always copies of each other.
They
And
are.
I watched a movie. I'm not into Bollywood. I'm not into movies from India, but
No, me.
I watched this one movie yesterday. It's called Lal. I'm going to make sure I get this right. Lal Chandra Singh. It's Lal Chandra Singh, and he was this 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 man in the movie portrayed this character portrayed in the movie was a Sikh of the Sikh culture, and
Mhm.
and the more I watched it, I realized I was watching the basically India's version of Forrest Gump. This guy was,
Oh,
oh, it was an incredible movie. I mean, he did.
was it?
I think it was. It very well might have been written as a novel long before. See, I'll have to find out about that. Did Forrest Gump, and because Hollywood is known to steal ideas from other
Of
places,
course.
and I was like, did this guy Lal Chandra Singh, was that screenplay? Did that come before Forrest Gump because it had the same storyline? He grew up sort of a dimwit, but people were fooled because of his exterior. He really wasn't a dimwit. And he, like Forrest Gump, he went on to do great things, become rich. He saved people during war conflicts. He never wanted to kill anybody. He was peaceful. He got all these medals for saving people, but never fired his gun. He showed him as a child running and his braces falling away as he's running, but it was their Indians version of Forrest Gump. And I watched it, and it was inspiring to know that they're looking at the fact that he was like Forrest Gump. He was an optimist, not a pessimist, and he always looked at the silver lining in things, accepting that there were negative things in the world. He never accepted that that's what he wanted to do, or he would allow it to affect him. So it was, more on the positive side of things. It wasn't totally neutral positive, because it, just like with Forrest Gump, what he allegedly achieved, that character achieved in the movie, would make the probably average person go insane, because you couldn't reconcile it with, to have his significant other who he loved his entire life, and she never recognized him as somebody who was famous or had money, and yet he had fame and money, but she wasn't smart enough to figure that out. And that was sort of like, was built into this same movie. And I was like, wow, India, whoever the screenwriters for this, I have to determine, did Forrest Gump come first, or did whoever wrote this screenplay, did they write a book first, and where did it come from? And it's sort of interesting that Hollywood likes to steal, plagiarize information, just like they did with the Seven Samurai. That was the Magnificent Seven, the cowboy movie with Yul Brynner. That came from Japan originally. We made it we supposedly made it our own, but I'm digressing here.
It's okay.
So, any concluding thoughts? I don't know if I have any more. I might have a couple more questions that maybe you can sort of put in a nutshell. I think we already discussed what the number one problem plaguing the world today is.
Oh yeah,
and you sort of,
yes,
overpopulation.
Yeah.
What do you think are the solutions to solving this problem and its and the resulting symptoms of that problem? What do you think
overpopulation?
Of overpopulation?
Well, while I don't think it's going to happen because of people's irrationality and unreasonableness, I think that what the plan have recommended at the birth stop is what needs to happen. But because everyone's being brainwashed that it's your right to have a child, it's your right to have as many children as you want to have. It doesn't matter what it does to the planet. They can't think any further than that. And they try to rationalize it away. And so it's going to be a long time before the human race on our planet is intelligent enough and mature enough and unselfish enough to, and I think it's going to take us almost destroying ourselves, Dawn, before people wake up. As happens so much in our world, people have to crash and burn, even on a micro level. On a macro level, I think our planet's going to have to crash and burn, unfortunately. It's going to be very painful, long process, which I'm not looking forward to in my future personalities. They're not even there yet.
I mean, I even thought about that myself. I thought, what if I asked Karrol about what she would say to an environmentalist and other groups protesting for change regarding climate destruction? What would you say to those individuals? Somebody like a Greta Thunberg. What could you potentially say where they would actually seriously listen to what you have to offer?
I really, unfortunately, and maybe fortunately for me, because I'm not under the illusion that I could say anything that would change their thinking, because the words are already out there and it's not making any difference. It's making a difference. Let me take that back. It's not that it's not making any difference. It's making an incremental difference, because it starts with the human being able to think. So unless they're able to think, any words that I have to say are going to roll right off of them.
Yes.
They aren't going to even understand or absorb, or they may even ridicule what I have to say, or think I'm like a eugenicist. That's one of the most common labels that are slapped on anyone who wants to encourage our population to humanely control the population. Because I have said, as you know, before on social media and stuff, it starts with each one of us. If we don't learn to control our population humanely, it will be done for us. And I don't mean
Yes.
just through governments and tyrannical leadership, but also through cause and effect. It will happen just because we will have so little food, so little clean air, so little water. We'll have destroyed everything through wars, that there won't be, only the hardiest will survive. There won't be a lot of arable land to farm. I mean, this is the stark reality of what's coming if we don't turn things around. And I don't see us turning things around. I don't.
It's happening in such, like you said, in such small steps that you're talking about famine, which once you have famine, you have disease, you have violence and wars, and climate change, and so the climate destruction. So then that resulting effect from our causes coming back on us will that'll cause, to some degree, it'll cause a depopulation. It'll reduce numbers on this planet in large numbers. So, and that's not talking about these other groups that are as it was already discussed, I think, in the contact notes, where they will effectively take matters into their own hands and try to do things, if we don't do them ourselves, starting as an individual. Because if we don't change ourselves as an individual, then getting together in communities means just groupthink and more of the same.
Exactly. And I think that, oh no, I lost my train of thought. I think that when people realize, when they finally realize, it will be because they've had so much pain. Because when these organizations, the powers that be, the elite, whoever you want to call them, decide to cull the population so that some vestige of flora and fauna can be preserved, it's going to be really painful and uncomfortable, horrible. It won't be done humanely. What, when you say when famine comes, well, unfortunately, famine's already here, and people don't even realize. They don't realize that, one of the reasons there are so many of us dying and are sick and everything isn't just the viruses and things that are going around. It's because we're not getting the nutrition that we're supposed to out of our food. And so then we have to be able to have the money to go out and buy new supplements, which good ones are very expensive. And so only those of us who can scrape up the money for the supplements are going to fare well. And the rest of the people are slowly dying from malnutrition. Even if they're 300 pounds, they may be malnourished.
Yeah, they don't have the right nutrition. And I even thought to ask the question about, what about, having strictly an organic diet? And I was told that good luck with that, because with all the herbicides and pesticides and the radioactive fallout from Fukushima, that there is no food source on the planet. They don't care if it's in Idaho or Dakota where they're growing wheat. Those organic food supplies are already affected and contaminated, just like the food sources that are processed and grown with weed killer and herbicide. They said there really will be no difference, that the organics, all the organic foods and supplements are still not safe.
No.
So people kid themselves when they think that, well, I'm going to be a vegan, I'm only going to eat organic, and it's a safer food source. It is not. It's no different than you can still have contaminated food supplies, and he said, yeah, with the radiation fallout, there is no safe grown food source anywhere. I asked Christian Frenner about that, and I believe he asked Billy, and then he said that was his response to me. And so I was like, and this was years ago, and I thought, well, then I can't imagine how it is now.
No, so all we can do, I mean, of course it helps if we grow our own foods because they have less, but they still have them. And so the conclusion I've come to also is that, all of us have detoxification mechanisms in our bodies to help us detoxify these poisons. But of course, we can only detoxify so much. But a lot of us, our detoxification may be hindered, or we may be hindering it in our lifestyle. So if someone were to ask me, well, what do you think I should do? What I'm doing, and that is trying to help my detoxification pathways in my body as much as I can. And that's limited too, because a lot of the products that you use to detoxify yourself, I mean, they're even saying
those products themselves are questionable.
Yeah. And now it's gotten to where they're telling you, go get any fish you eat, any fish like say cod liver, because cod liver is so high in vitamin A and omega-3s, to only get these products from Norway, the Norwegian waters, because that right now is the least polluted area in the world. That's what it's come to.
Yes.
Is there are these little pockets that are less polluted. That's all we have. We don't have anywhere. If I see an ad that says from the pure crystal clean waters of such and such, I just start laughing.
Yeah.
I said, there are no pure crystal clean waters anywhere anymore.
Well, and I found that true with you take good products like spirulina, chlorella, and you're going, well, some of the best producers of that were off the coast of Okinawa.
Yeah.
Well, look at after Fukushima. And so now they're saying, well, now you can get it from unadulterated off the coast of British Columbia near Vancouver Island. And I'm thinking, well, that's the Pacific Northwest. They've already detected high rates of radiation from not just Fukushima, but all the atomic bomb testing we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 decades on the planet. It's in our ocean. So there are no trusted source, but yet you try to use what you have available to detox your body, get rid of the heavy metals. But then again, you said a sort of a telling thing there. Your lifestyle has a lot to do with that. Yeah. So I look at exposure to the sun, how much time I'm outside, wearing sunblock as opposed to not wearing it, recognizing the different forms of cancer that could be introduced into your body, and also living life in a sense of harmony with nature, and sort of how that sense of serotonin is also beneficial to you living a healthy lifestyle. And so it's not all doom and gloom.
No.
You can't, I don't like to dwell on that. I like to recognize it and not get carried away with it, but I have to recognize it's there.
Yeah. And so what I was going to end with that was to say, but nonetheless, supporting your detoxification pathway, we just need to be realistic that if we know that even some of the products we're using to detoxify are going to be adulterated, then we also need to make sure we're doing things like making sure we sweat, really have a really good sweat 3 times a week, whether it's through exercise or sauna or hot baths. People don't realize you sweat in a hot bath. One of the things that I've been doing is taking and adding Epsom salts and sea minerals to a hot bath to help my body detoxify, because that's a very effective way to detoxify your body. And so we're going to have to spend more time doing that, doing things to help our bodies detoxify so that we can maintain our health. Yes, our thoughts are huge, but even with harmony and good thoughts, your body can be overwhelmed by just. That's why Billy made the statement recently, and it was just kind of timely in a contact note. Well, the level of toxicity, I'm paraphrasing, on the planet is rising. And so now more women are going to be dealing with breast cancer. He didn't say, well, women are all becoming toxic and negative in their thinking, and so now they're going to be.
Well, what I meant regarding that was based on your thoughts and your applying them. From that, you can live correctly and do the things
Oh,
physically
yes.
to help
Oh,
you.
yes,
Uh,
because you're,
yeah,
I
if you
see what
don't have
you're
that
saying.
train of thought, obviously,
Yeah,
you will just maybe go off the deep end or ignore it or not take the
right,
steps needed. But if you don't have the proper thought process, which involves meditation and focus too,
right.
you can't apply any of this information. All you can do is, like and Billy talks about that speculation is only good if you apply the speculative thinking, but speculation is just like opinion, or it is
Yes,
opinion.
yeah,
It's just a repeated cycle of thinking about something but not really having the answers. So
right.
you opine on it, but you never get to the bottom of anything. And so
Well, what you just said made, it's a good point as far as, getting your thinking in line, because when, for example, when you bring up cancer, there are people when they, I guess, I don't remember what the statistics were that what I read, but it was significant. And they said, I'll just say as a blanket statement, that when a person gets a diagnosis like that, the chances of them having a heart attack or killing themselves goes up dramatically. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that, but it makes sense. From the stress, right? Or just they think, well, my life's done. I'm over. I'm too afraid. I'm just going to kill myself now and not, if they get a particularly dire diagnosis. And then if you've got someone who's, understands more about who we are, where we came from, what we're doing here, and the power of our thoughts, they're going to be more likely to go, okay, what do I need to do about this?
yeah,
You
see
know?
what you just described there is exactly what the no you know. I
Yeah,
probably for the listeners and viewers out there, you probably don't know what the nocebo effect is, but
yeah,
that's the nocebo effect. It's sort of the
uh-huh,
opposite of the placebo effect.
yes,
It's where you can actually the might of your thoughts going to a negative form of thinking can actually inflict harm on you physically,
yeah. So
uh,
they have a heart attack. Yeah,
cause a heart attack.
exactly. And or they, they're so in fear, and unfortunately, the drug companies are so want to make everyone so afraid of what you have. But we're here to rescue you. So I just encourage people to really look into what's in those things that they want to give you, and is it going to support your immune system or not? Is it going
Yeah,
to help you heal or not?
yeah, or wreak havoc and give you one beneficial outcome, which
Yeah.
is, and then the 30 other bad outcomes that you can't control.
Right. Well, I think science, there are scientists out there who understand the folly in the kind of the direction that they're going in. And so they're going in another direction, and it's more of a natural, direction based on, what it causes cancer in the first place. And why, they understand it's a metabolic issue. So of course, something is causing the metabolic issue. It can be a combination of things. It could be genetic and toxicity and your thinking, and, or it could be you're overwhelmed by some pollution and you didn't even know it, or maybe you did and you thought, well, I don't know what's going to happen to me. And, but maybe later the person develops cancer. But they're understanding that, they're looking at the actual mechanisms, so that instead of trying to fix it in a way that goes against nature, they're going with nature.
They're going with nature, which is
And I
closer
think
to
they're,
homeopathic medicine.
yeah, they're going
And
with
even
nature.
the silent desperation, where a lot of people live in that sort of silent desperation and
Hmm.
don't know what they're going to do in the near or immediate future, and what
Yeah,
they're and in their right now, the immediacy, they don't know how they're going to deal with it, but they don't want to share it with anybody because they don't want to cause panic and they don't want to make their children or members of their family fearful. So they
right.
kind of quietly let it just progress.
Yeah, I
And
know.
so, like you say, love comes from within, healing comes from within.
It
So
does.
I think you're advocating for people to uh, at least try to help heal themselves and
Oh,
not
yes.
putting all that responsibility in the hands of the medical society here in the
Yeah.
United States.
Because even people who decide to go with conventional, and I understand that. I understand there are things you can do with conventional treatment to make it less toxic and protect your body, so that you don't have those extreme reactions to like chemotherapy or things, if that's the direction you go in. you know, that have much better outcomes. They did a survey, and they did a survey of 3 groups. People, I don't know why they didn't do it, in the survey. It wasn't the group of people who do only natural wasn't included. It's kind of interesting. They
Yes.
just did people who did only conventional treatments, people who took conventional treatments and natural treatments and did them together, and then people who did nothing and who fared the best. So the people who combined the natural and the conventional treatments of these 3 groups did the best. The people who did nothing were second. The people who only did conventional had the worst outcomes.
They were worst
That's
outcomes.
that's very telling.
Yeah, it almost seems like you're
Very telling.
the first group is actually doing something to at least help and maybe boost their primary and secondary immune system. Because if you're saying, well, I'm going to use conventional medicine and then I'm going to use what is more natural cures and things that could boost your immune system, and you combine them, you can counter the negative effects of what they call the contraindications from certain prescriptions. You can counter the negative effects. Whereas and even doing nothing is still better for it to be the second group. And it did surprise me, but I was waiting for you to say that they would be the second group, that they did nothing, and it did, but because they did not destroy their immune system and they let it progress naturally, whatever was the cancer or whatever.
Right. So what happens in a lot of cases, you know, and it depends on the person and their immune system, the ones who do nothing. It depends on their thought processes, of course. But just from what I'm reading, it's like it's all over the place, of course. But generally, they still do better because some of them have pretty good immune systems and they overcome it somehow without doing anything different, which is rare. Because you know, you're doing nothing. And some the cancer just grows very slowly, and instead of it going like a wildfire. Because sometimes when we intervene not in the correct way, it can actually cause the disease to flare up and get worse.
Advance.
More quickly. And then of course some people just die from the treatments. Just the treatments themselves are just so toxic. And so it makes sense. If you're not going to do anything and take anything into your own hands, you're going to feel powerless.
I just want to say thank you. And again, I urge people to, I'll leave a link in the description below this video of your podcast, Reality Ranch, which is by Anchor. It's an Anchor platform. So I wanted to say thank you.